Chapter 2. The Gift. Vesper never asked about her mother again. The hurt in her aunt's eyes that night was just too painful, but some of her words stuck in her mind, like an itch that couldn't be scratched. Vesper wondered what her mother did that made her so sick and how had everyone paid the price for it. She found out the truth not long after she had turned 16, and it changed her life forever. "I heard some of the cooks talking about your aunt," whispered Aurelia, her eyes darting around to see who was listening. Aurelia was one of the girls Vesper grew up with, and she had grown more insufferable as she grew older. She was the first one of them to get her moon flow, and for some reason after that, she seemed to think it made her older and more mature despite them being the same age. She also had a deep love for anything sweet and often snuck about the communal kitchens trying to pilfer desserts, and as a result she picked up on most of the gossip that went around the village. Vesper never took much of what she said seriously, none of the children did. She was a gossip on the best of days and took a special joy in the attention she got from spreading stories that were often greatly exaggerated, or worse, made up on the spot for attention. They said she consorts with evil spirits, that she isn't really your kin, and she stole you from some poor merchant woman in the market, mumbled the small, hazel-eyed girl around a mouthful of sweet bread, all the while nodding like she herself had been present to witness Vesper's abduction. But on that day, something about what she said had a kernel of truth and it enraged her. Vesper didn't remember much after Aurelia had told everyone that her aunt was a servant of the underworld. All she knew was that one moment she was nodding along to what the other girl was saying. And the next, Aurelia was launched through the air, flying like a bird, landing on the dirt with a horrible crunch and clutching a bloody nose. Vesper could only remember screaming, "Liar," over and over, her entire body trembling with rage. Then, as always, her aunt was there, appearing from nowhere, and taking her into her arms. Vesper fought against Magda like a caged animal, battering and kicking while baring her teeth, but the older woman held her tight, rocking her back and forth while whispering soothing words into her ear until her blood cooled. Vesper shuddered and came to her senses. She found that along with her aunt, a small crowd of parents gathered around the two girls, all of them staring wide-eyed and wringing their hands, faces creased with worry. She blinked in confusion for a moment until she saw Aurelia's face, blooded and stained with tears. "I told you the girl should not be here," shouted a dark-haired woman with hazel-colored eyes that matched Aurelia's. "The girl is a savage just like her mother." "Mind your tongue, Gara," snapped Magda, her nostrils flaring at Aurelia's mother. "Or you will find out how savage I can be." The two women locked eyes, and Vesper felt like something passed between them. Without another word, Gara took a step forward, standing protectively in front of her daughter who bowed her head, staring wide-eyed at Vesper from behind her mother's skirts. "No, Magda, I will not. Your family has only brought shame to our people, and I, for one, will not let my child suffer for your foolish pact. It was only a few cuts and bruises this time. What happens when she really hurts someone?" "It wasn't my fault, she started it," Vesper began, wiping snot from her nose, pressing in closer to her aunt. "Quiet, child," said Magda in a low voice before turning her attention to the small crowd, giving them a hard look. "That pact has kept the peace for hundreds of years, has kept us safe from Rome. So don't question the good fortune that you wake every morning as a free citizen of the empire and not a slave. Just be grateful for the sacrifices my family has made for you, for all of you." Gara opened her mouth to speak, but her aunt silenced her with a raised hand, turning and showing her back to all of them. "Come, Vesper," began her aunt, wrapping an arm over her shoulders and pulling her along. Today I must accept that you are no longer a child and that my burden has grown heavier sooner than expected." They took a single step, and Vesper's heart skipped a beat like she'd been plunged into ice-cold water. She blinked and found herself at the base of the great tree, dazed and confused, surprised to find her skin smooth and dry. Her aunt took a seat in front of her on a large root, her shoulders slumping as she let out a weary sigh. Vesper had more questions than she had words for, but something in the way her aunt looked up at the great tree made her hold her tongue. It was strange, her aunt had always looked young and full of life. Her nut-brown skin had always been smooth and clear, without a wrinkle or even a blemish. She was ever ready with a smile on her full lips, but not now. She looked worn out, with her laugh lines deeper, and Vesper saw wrinkles forming in the corners of her dark eyes. When at last she spoke, it was with a voice that was hoarse and frail. "You must control your anger, child. It is a dangerous thing for people like us, for the chosen." Vesper folded her legs under her and sat down on the soft earth, cross-legged, cocking her head. "I still don't even know what happened. One minute Aurelia was, forget about that foolish girl and her thick-headed mother," said Magda with a snort. "It is important to listen to what I tell you today." "What did you mean?" "People like us," asked Vesper, finally hearing her aunt's words. "We may look the same, but you, me, along with some others in the village, we are different." Vesper bit the inside of her cheek thinking of all the times her aunt appeared out of nowhere, of how they were suddenly at the base of the tree when only moments ago they were in the middle of the village. "Are you going to show me how you do that, be in a place one moment and then in another without moving? You said that you would show me." Magda smiled at her, and some of her vigor returning. "You always want to run before you can walk, don't you, child? No, today I will give you a gift that will keep you safe. A tool to keep everyone safe." Vesper gasped when her aunt raised a finger and it began to glow with a soft white light. "I will need you to remove your tunic. Please." Unable to pull her gaze away, Vesper did as she was told, shivering despite the heat when she tossed aside the linen top she wore. "I'm scared." "Don't be. You are about to begin a grand journey," said her aunt, moving in closer and touching her exposed chest with the glowing finger. Continuing in a voice which was little more than a whisper. "This place, this tree, is special. Never forget that." She winced, a gasp escaping her lips. "It hurts," she said, trying to squirm away from the burning pain that shot through her chest, only to find herself held in place by a force she couldn't see. Her aunt continued, ignoring her struggle, her pain. "Here in this grove, under this tree, the veil between worlds is thin, things that are normally not possible, are possible." "Like making your finger glow?" asked Vesper, sucking in deep quick breaths and steeling herself against the pain. Part of her was terrified of what was happening, but her curiosity got the better of her, and she couldn't tear her gaze away from what Magda was doing. Her aunt had never hurt her, had never even raised a finger to punish her. Most of the parents in their village had no qualms about using a strap, or a switch, on sensitive bottoms, but Magda had always turned up her nose whenever she had witnessed such things, calling the whole idea of hurting a child barbaric. Yes, and much more. Vesper's brows came together while she watched her aunt trace a pattern the color of alabaster that contrasted brightly against her brown skin. At first it looked like gibberish, a child's scribble, but the longer she watched it began to take shape into something familiar. "It's a baobab, our village tree." Her aunt nodded, beads of sweat forming on her forehead while she worked. "The tree was here long before our people lived here, long before anyone, and hopefully will be here long after we are gone." Vesper opened her mouth to speak, only to be silenced when she realized her aunt was changing before her eyes. Her skin, normally dark and smooth, was covered in concentric patterns similar in color to the tree she was drawing on Vesper's chest. "What's happening to you? To your eyes?" she asked when the irises in Magda's brown eyes took on a bright green hue that seemed to drink in the light. "What you see on my skin is the story of my life. Important moments of my journey through this world. What you see in my eyes is the energy of this sacred place here. I am a conduit for nature's energy." Nature's energy? I don't understand. It's just a tree, a plant. Nature's energy is the fire that drives all creation. It springs from all things, it surrounds us. You can feel it in the tree at your back, or the rock on which you sit, even the dirt under your feet. It is the spark of life, and the path to our power. Vesper stared wide-eyed at her aunt, digging her toes into the mossy earth, its cool dampness sending gooseflesh up and down her arms, an odd contrast to the burning on her skin. "The dirt is icky and cold." "It's just dirt." Her aunt's face lost some of its intensity and stretched to a warm smile, her green eyes bright against her weathered, sun-kissed skin. "Even the tiniest speck of dirt is full of life, full of power," she said, digging her free hand into the sod and showing her a handful of dark earth. "And through our gifts, we are conduits, vessels that can transform this crude matter into something wonderful." Vesper gasped in awe when the soil in her aunt's hand began to glow like sunlight shimmering through water, floating above her open palm. "It's so pretty," she said, cocking her head, not daring to blink. The dirt in Magda's hand swelled and sparkled, growing and expanding until circling them both like a dust devil. "The Romans, in their childish understanding of the world, tell that the gods are responsible for such things," continued her aunt. The dust devil concentrated into a small ball of flame that floated above them, glowing brightly. "They say that the gods drag the sun across the sky each day, that the gods control the seas and the harvest. Even life and death, they judge you for your deeds after you have passed and cradle you in their warm embrace if you have lived a good life by their standards." "The gods don't exist?" asked Vesper. "I don't know, child. I can't say for certain. But I know of the Loe, of the spirits of our ancestors that can do great things," said her aunt, taking the ball of flame and closing her hand around it to make a fist, "but they are nothing like the Romans say. I know there is more. I have seen it with my own eyes, read stories of Loe that can do as the gods do, make flames so bright that the sun looks dim by comparison, or part the sea so that an entire civilization can cross it." "Can you do such things?" asked Vesper, her eyes growing wider with every word that fell from her aunt's lips. Magda shook her head, the weariness returning to her eyes. "No, the world has changed too much. What was possible long ago is no longer possible today." "Why not?" "Some say that we've simply lost the wisdom to know such things," said her aunt with a shrug. "Or that our blood has thinned with time, and we lack the connection to draw deeply enough on the power that exists all around us. But I believe that we have become closed off to the wonders of the world. The Romans, in their desire to define reality, have limited it. As a people, they lack imagination, and their boring, mundane view of reality has locked the world into their version, and no other version can come forth. But I have explained enough for now. Quiet yourself so I can finish my work." Vesper nodded, her thoughts racing while she watched her aunt draw the image of the tree on her flat chest, fascinated by how she brought even the most minute detail to life, of how every branch and bit of rough bark looked real, so much so that she could almost hear the rustle of the wind passing through its leaves, smell the sweet scent of its fruit. The glow around her aunt's finger faded, and just as quickly as it had begun, it was over with only a slight lingering pain on her skin. Magda stood and stepped back, admiring her work. Not my best, but it will do in a hurry, she said, dry washing her hands and nodding with approval. Vesper looked down at the fine work that began just below her shoulder blade and ended just above her womanhood, a small smile creeping to her face as an idea sprung to mind. So does that mean I can do the things you do, jump from place to place? Or make glowing balls of flame appear above my palm? Magda gave her an incredulous look as she laughed so hard Vesper was sure they heard her at the heart of the village. No, girl. These things will take years to learn, and a lifetime to perfect. In this instance, you truly must learn to walk before you run. Then why in the name of the gods did you put this silly thing on my chest? She shot back, stung by the older woman's mockery. Magda sighed, putting a hand on Vesper's shoulder before continuing in patient tones, the heart rune is the beginning of understanding. I put it there so that I can teach you, to protect you, so you don't have to live with the guilt of murdering some poor fool who angers you because you cannot control yourself. I don't understand, she said, tracing a finger over the fresh lines burned into her chest, lost in the infinite pattern of the tree. You don't have to understand, child. You simply must trust me, said Magda, clapping her hands together. Tomorrow I will begin to teach you, but for one last day, you will see the world like everyone else does, and be grateful for your time spent in ignorance. We will go home, have a fine meal, and spend the evening gazing at the stars one last time.